You don't miss people at the same time. That truth quietly destroys more relationships than betrayal ever could, and no one warns you until it's already too late. Let me speak to you like someone who has watched this pattern repeat thousands of times. Men and women don't experience emotional loss on the same timeline. They don't feel absence the same way, and they don't regret the same moments. This isn't about who loved more. It's about how the mind protects itself when attachment breaks. When a connection ends, women usually feel the emotional weight immediately, not because they're weaker, but because they process reality faster. Women sense the shift before the breakup even happens. They notice the tone change, the distance, the subtle withdrawal. By the time words are spoken, their nervous system has already been grieving. So when it finally ends, the pain hits early, intensely, and honestly. Sleepless nights, overthinking, replaying conversations, asking, "What did I miss?" That's not drama, that's emotional awareness colliding with loss. Men, on the other hand, often feel relief first. Space feels like peace. Silence feels like control returning. Distraction becomes medicine. Work, friends, gym, entertainment. Anything that keeps emotions quiet. This isn't cruelty, it's conditioning. Men are taught early that emotional exposure equals weakness, so their minds delay the pain. They compartmentalize it. They tell themselves they're fine, and for a while, they genuinely believe it. This is why women often ask, "How did you move on so fast?" And men think, "Why is she hurting so deeply already?" But here's the truth most people never hear. Women feel the loss earlier because they emotionally invested earlier. Men feel it later because they emotionally avoided it longer. Time passes. The woman begins to stabilize. She processes, releases, and slowly reclaims her sense of self. The pain doesn't vanish, it integrates. She grows around it. Meanwhile, the man's emotional debt quietly accumulates interest. The distractions stop working. The silence gets louder. And one ordinary moment, driving alone, lying awake at night, seeing something familiar, unlocks everything he postponed. That's when men miss you. Not when you leave, not when you cry, but when the emotional bill finally arrives. This delayed impact confuses everyone. Women think men never cared. Men think women moved on too easily. Both are wrong. They just lived the same loss on different timelines. And here's the part no one wants to admit. The one who feels it earlier often heals sooner. The one who avoids it longer suffers deeper later. So, if you're someone who feels pain quickly, intensely, and honestly, don't shame yourself. That early ache is your strength. And if you're someone who pushes pain aside and tells yourself you're fine, understand this. Emotions don't disappear when ignored. They wait. This difference isn't about gender superiority. It's about emotional strategy. And every strategy has a cost. Here's what most people never realize. Missing someone isn't proof of love. It's proof of attachment colliding with reality. And men and women collide with that reality in very different ways. When women miss someone early, it's not always because they want the person back. It's because their mind is trying to close emotional loops. Women are wired to seek understanding. So, when something ends, their brain goes into meaning-making mode. What happened? Why did it change? What did it say about me? Missing someone becomes part of the process of regaining emotional clarity. It's painful, but it's purposeful. Each tear, each thought is the mind slowly accepting truth. Men don't usually do this. Men are wired to seek stability and control, so when something ends, their mind protects them by minimizing emotional chaos. They focus on regaining structure, routine, independence, self-image. That's why men often say, "I'm good," even when they're not. They're not lying. They just haven't accessed the emotional layer yet. This is where misunderstandings become permanent scars. A woman sees a man moving forward and assumes she meant nothing. A man sees a woman grieving and assumes she's trying to manipulate or cling. Neither interpretation is fair. Both are incomplete. What actually happens is this. Women process the emotional truth first, while men process the practical reality first. Women feel the emotional loss before life reorganizes. Men reorganize life before feeling the emotional loss, and then time flips the experience. As women heal, they regain perspective. They stop romanticizing what hurt them. They see patterns clearly. They remember not just the love, but the cost of it. This is why women often become emotionally unavailable later. It's not bitterness, it's discernment earned through pain. Men, meanwhile, begin to feel what they postponed. They remember the emotional safety, the presence, the way someone cared in quiet, consistent ways they didn't value enough at the time. That's when missing turns into regret. Not regret for the breakup, but regret for emotional negligence. For moments, they were distant. For words, they never said. This is why men often reach out months later with confusion in their voice. I don't know why I'm feeling this now. And women respond with calm detachment. I already felt that. By the time men miss you, women have usually already mourned you. This timing mismatch creates the illusion that women move on faster and men feel deeper later. But what's really happening is emotional honesty versus emotional delay. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The person who feels later often feels alone, because by then, the other person has already done the work of letting go. There's no audience for delayed pain, no comfort, no reassurance, just reflection. So if you're someone who misses early, know this: you are not losing dignity. You're gaining clarity. And if you're someone who misses late, understand this: avoidance doesn't make pain disappear. It just removes the support system you could have had. Emotions have their own timing. Ignore them, and they'll choose a moment when you're least prepared. Now let me tell you the part that feels uncomfortable, because it exposes the silent power shift that happens after separation. When women miss early, they often feel powerless. They question themselves. They replay moments. They feel exposed, vulnerable, as if their emotions have put them at a disadvantage. But what they don't see yet is that this early vulnerability is doing something critical. It's burning illusion out of the system. Early pain forces honesty. Women are far more likely to confront the truth of who someone actually was versus who they hoped they could be. They sit with the disappointment. They allow the fantasy to collapse. That collapse hurts, but it frees them. And once a woman emotionally accepts reality, attachment weakens rapidly. Not because love disappears overnight, but because the mind stops protecting the image of the other person. Men don't go through this collapse immediately. When men miss late, it's often because the illusion stayed alive longer. Without emotional processing, memory becomes selective. The mind replays warmth but edits out neglect. It remembers comfort but forgets conflict. And absence gives those memories room to grow louder. What men miss later isn't just the person, it's the version of themselves that felt grounded, understood, or supported in that relationship. This is why late missing feels heavier. It's mixed with self-judgment, with "I should have," with "why didn't I see this sooner?" The pain isn't just about loss, it's about awareness arriving too late. Here's the psychological shift most people never notice. By the time men emotionally arrive, women have emotionally departed. Women who've already grieved no longer seek answers. They've made peace with uncertainty. And peace looks like indifference to someone who hasn't reached it yet. That indifference is often misread as coldness, but it's actually emotional resolution. Men interpret this as rejection all over again. That's when confusion turns into obsession. Why does she seem fine? Why doesn't she miss me now? Why does it feel like I lost something permanent? Because you did, but not when you thought you did. This is the hidden asymmetry of emotional timing. Whoever processes first regains control first. Not control over the other person, but over themselves. Women often underestimate this power because it's quiet. It doesn't look dramatic. It looks like calm, boundaries, detachment, and to someone who hasn't healed yet, that calm feels devastating. And here's the hard truth you need to hear, whether you're a man or a woman. Missing someone later doesn't make it deeper. It makes it lonelier. There's no shared grief anymore, no mutual processing, just delayed emotion echoing in an empty space. This is why reconnections fail so often. One person is reaching back from pain, the other is protecting peace. Different emotional locations, same history. So if you're missing someone early, don't rush to suppress it. Feel it fully. It's temporary. If you're missing someone late, don't romanticize the past. Ask yourself what you avoided feeling before and why. Because timing doesn't define love, but it absolutely determines who heals and who keeps hurting. Now listen carefully, because this is where everything you've experienced finally makes sense. The real tragedy isn't that men miss later and women miss earlier. The tragedy is that most people interpret missing as a signal to act instead of a signal to understand. Missing doesn't always mean go back. Sometimes it means pay attention to what you ignored. For women, missing early is often the nervous system begging for emotional closure. Once closure is reached, internally, not externally, the attachment loosens. This is why chasing someone who has already processed the loss rarely works. Their heart isn't closed out of anger. It's closed because the chapter already ended inside them. For men, missing later is often the moment emotional awareness finally catches up to lived experience. It's when the mind stops hiding behind distraction and finally asks, "What did this relationship give me that I didn't know how to value?" That realization can be transformative or destructive, depending on what's done with it. This is where maturity enters the picture. Emotionally mature people don't chase based on longing alone. They use missing as information. What patterns did I repeat? What needs did I outsource? What emotional skills did I avoid developing? Missing someone becomes less about the person and more about the self that existed with them. When this insight is ignored, people cycle endlessly, breaking, missing, returning, breaking again. But when it's understood, something shifts. You stop seeing timing as fate and start seeing it as feedback. And here's the truth that hurts, but heals. Sometimes you miss someone, not because they were right for you, but because they exposed something unresolved inside you. Safety you never learned to give yourself. Validation you depended on externally. Emotional regulation you hadn't mastered yet. This applies to everyone. If you miss early, your work is to learn patience with emotional intensity, to trust that clarity follows pain. If you miss late, your work is to learn emotional presence, before absence forces it upon you. Love doesn't fail because people stop caring. It fails because people feel at different speeds. So instead of asking, "Why didn't they miss me when I missed them?" ask, "What is this timing trying to teach me about myself?" Because the lesson isn't about men versus women. It's about awareness versus avoidance, honesty versus delay. And the moment you understand that, you stop chasing people and you start choosing growth. Now let me ask you something personal. When a relationship ended in your life, did you feel the loss immediately or did it hit you much later? Tell me in the comments which one you are and why you think that is. If this spoke to something you've lived through, like the video, subscribe for deeper psychology like this and share it with someone who needs to understand their own timing.